The next property that we're going to talk about is the associative property. The associative property applies to multiplication and addition, just like the commutative property. So we've got the associative property of multiplication and the associative property of addition. The associative property of multiplication is where I'm going to start. The definition here is you can group numbers differently and still get the same answer. You can group numbers differently and still get the same answer. So what we mean by that is we could do 3 times 2 in parentheses and then multiply all of that by 5, and that's the same as 3 times the quantity 2 plus 5, where 2 and 5 are in parentheses. So whenever we see parentheses, a lot of times we can kind of deduce that it's either the associative property or the distributive property, which we'll talk about soon. But what I want you to see here is order of operations tells us to do parentheses first. And 3 times 2 is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. So this side is 30. Over here, if we do parentheses first, 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times 3 is 30. 30 equals 30. So these two sides are equal, even though the grouping, the parentheses, are different. So the associative property order stays the same. 3, 2, 5, 3, 2, 5. But our grouping, our parentheses, change because here 3 and 2 are grouped together, and over here 2 and 5 are grouped together. So if I wanted to show this with variables, I could put f times g inside parentheses and then multiply that by h and say that that's equal to f times the quantity, and the quantity just tells me to put parentheses, g times h. So notice I have the same order, f, g, h, but my groupings, where my parentheses are, change. And the first one, f and g, are paired together. And then in the second one, g and h are paired together using parentheses. So over here, where we've got the associative property of addition, we're really talking about the same thing, just instead of multiply symbols, we're using addition symbols. So you can group numbers differently and still get the same answer. You can group numbers differently and still get the same answer. So my example would be, I could do 5 plus 2 in parentheses and then add 10 and say that's equal to 5 plus the quantity 2 plus 10. And if you are still not sure if you believe me or not, do the math. In parentheses we have 5 plus 2, so that's 7. 7 plus 10 is 17. Over here in parentheses, 2 plus 10 is 12, and 12 plus 5 is 17, so 17 equals 17. That is a true statement. So we can also write this with variables. We could do r plus s in parentheses plus t, or we could say r plus the quantity s plus t in parentheses here for our other example. So notice again, order stays the same. 5, 2, 10, 5, 2, 10. RST, RST. But our groupings, how things are in parentheses, change. And that's the associative property of multiplication and division. So the way that I remember this little trick that I use is who I associate with is who I am friends with. It's who I group myself with. So I kind of do a silly thing. 3 and 2 group themselves together. They're friends on this side of the equation. On the other side, 2 and 5 are friends. They've grouped themselves together with parentheses. So groupings have changed, but order has stayed the same. Always, associate yourself with who you are in a group with, who you're in a friend group with. So grouping is what changes with the associative property.